this session. Okay. Right. All right. So, Shirley, I'm going to try and zoom in. As everybody has seen, I have a very crappy low res screen on this computer. All right, and we're starting a little bit late. Sorry about that. Okay, tell us about it.
I did the energy demand rise faster than the population.
Okay. All right. Tell us about this problem and how you went finding out about it and my feedback and
yeah. So from the previous feedback, because I list a lot of costs for this problem, but you asked me to focus on one cost. So the cost I focus on is the I think it's more of the affordability of the vehicle and the fuel for people, more than housing. So people would rather spend more money on the vehicle and fuels, drive a bit far, live a bit far, rather than spend more money on the house. So that's caused the problem of the urbanism and the like more energy use and the pollution. And I think the fix that field is like more population cause the needs of more housing, and then the government spend more money on the traffic infrastructure, but then it's caused more pollution because people would spend like more money on the vehicle. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. All right. And all right. And this is the kind of the loop that describes.
Yeah, that's the loop from last week, and I add the like a additional like circle, like the cost. I think it maybe like rise the cost of the a vehicle or the fuel or the public traffic. It might be stop people, like it might stop the urban spa.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that the one way to slow this loop down, or one way to break the loop, would be to increase the cost of cars, or?
Yeah, or the fees for people travel, like yeah, so not use maybe increase the fee for the like trams, public transport, and then they will more of like a walkable and bikeable city.
Okay, so those are alternatives. So that would be another way to break the loop, which would be a different ball. But I can see here you've added cost to the general cost of travel.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, all right.
Yeah, it's just a diagram showing the problem and yeah, like just
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks to me like the key societal systems involved are car salespeople.
Yeah.
Some sort of installation company. Are you talking about
like they try to solve the problem by using like a solar panel, but it causes more problem, I think, because when people think the energy is cheaper, they might use it more.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of related, but it's off to the side somewhat, because I think your main kind of thesis is okay. So it's right. So it's energy. Okay, so that it's definitely an energy problem.
Mm.
and making people travel further uses more energy. That's for certain. Okay, I got it. And who have you've assigned Enrique Penalosa?
Yeah,
Okay, tell us about what this guy would have done.
I think he's more focused because he talk about like improve the public traffic infrastructure cannot help the pollution. He think the reduce the use of car can help. So he encourage people to have an like an annual car free day, like no cars
Yep.
driving on the day. Yeah, so I think he might like do something, maybe stop the public transfer for a day, like for people just to walk or bike. Maybe I don't know.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe. There's never been a thing I know of in Victoria where we stopped using transport for a day. We have ride to work day when everybody's encouraged by the government to ride a bicycle instead of driving. We have walking day, but yeah, I think one day when you're not allowed to drive would be quite amazing.
Yeah.
It certainly make a whole lot of people think about transport differently. Okay, and have you got is Darren there?
No, I think he's not here today.
Okay, are you able to explain his one, Shirley?
Not quite sure, but I think he's more of the like transport as well, because I think the policy entrepreneur is Jeff's spec.
Yep.
So he talk about like more walkable city, and then like develop the city rather than just like go to like urban.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll follow up with Darren on that one. All right. Thanks for that. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Not so far. Yeah, I think my only comment, Shirley, on your part of the work at least, is you would just reinforce that it's an energy problem.
Yeah.
And that urban sprawl results in more energy because people have to drive so much further. So and that sort of ties those two things together, so that if you were going to try and solve this, you would focus on that one association, the fact that the more it sprawls, the more people have to drive, the more the energy. You could imagine as the city gets bigger and bigger, the energy demand is just increasing enormously, which it is. Alrighty, let's pull up team number 2. Okay, Ria and Cindy, you want to have a shot at this?
Yeah.
All right. Do you need my mural or can you use yours?
I can share my screen.
All right. Thank you.
Craig, can you stop sharing?
Yeah, you can't share while I'm sharing. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's the same problem that I looked at last week. So which was like meaning in isolated places in cities. But this time after receiving the feedback, I just kind of got into the cause of it. So the examples which I'm looking at considering isolated spaces are like unstructured landscape, parking lots or abandoned waterfronts, unused plazas or some edges of freeways, which are usually caused because as economic and urbanization increases, there are more roadways and highways developed, which usually cause such places. And yep, so the cause is again urban sprawl, or cities undergoing rapid urbanization causing such spaces. And the reason these spaces are created is because also there's a lack of connectivity and accessibility to these spaces. And they are quite neglected and not the quality is not improved, which also encourages sometimes illegal activities in such areas.
Mm.
And for fixes that fails, I just researched again on this one. So there were architects and designers who again tried to fix this issue by repurposing the spaces. But then they were like, they designed it as per their terms and laws. And there were benches added, trees and landscape was added, but yet the place did not turn to be useful because it was not done in the interest of the neighborhoods. So it again became like a developed meaningless space. And then also there were some policies introduced by the government of USA, but there were only 4% of the engineers who were actually following the rules and regulations, because they were only mandatory for the projects which were federally funded. So again, there were many engineers who didn't follow the rules. So it was sort of again a fail.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's some limit to the success. So if the spaces are designed and redeveloped, if they're not maintained over time, then again, they would result into unused and meaningless spaces.
Right.
The solution that I looked at is somewhat with the policy entrepreneur that I chose, which was Fred Kent.
Yep.
So Fred Kent, along with TPS, looks at creating spaces for community.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses transportation as just a means to move from one place to another,
Mm-hmm.
and not as something which should over-dominate the city. And by that, he means like creating spaces for people with a balance of roads and spaces.
Okay.
And the loop that I looked at is this one. So this is a continuous loop, which is like economic growth causes urbanization, and then transportation and infrastructure. And then again, it causes migration and new roads are built.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a stuck loop. So for that, the way I'm looking to break it is like with improved planning,
Mm-hmm.
and then created places for people where people actually want to be. So maybe the edges of freeways or something could be for people, and
Mm-hmm.
where maybe parents would feel safe to leave their children there and not just like an abandoned place.
Okay.
Yep, that's all. And this is the same diagram I had last week.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay. Great.
Cindy, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So the problem I got is the decreasing green spaces in cities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was caused by first rapid population growth, and also urban expansion. There's not much land for the green spaces,
Mm-hmm.
and also the high cost of construction. Because if people want to build a green space, it will need more land, and that will greater the urban expansion, and that also caused like people have to build more public transportation and then the transportation network to work for that, and that will increase the cost of that. So and people's indifference to the green space and natural environment is also the cause, like the designer and the investors are not focus on this problem, and because they can design the building with more green space, but that could reduce the use space for people, and that will not be very economic for them. And the figures that fail, I found an example that Seoul in South Korea has like demolished the highways to make room for new green spaces, but that also reduced the accessibility of the space. So it's inconvenience for people to get to the space, and they have to choose public transportation. And I think that's this method needs to be based on the developed public transportation network, maybe. And also the construction of new green space can increase the value of properties around the community, especially in poor neighborhoods. And as rent and the property value rise, and they might harm poor residents and force them to leave their home, maybe. I think that's the problem. And limited to success, I'm not sure about this. I said the ever increasing population and housing demand is like a unstoppable problem.
Yeah.
So that will stop the people solve this issue. And the solution I found, this is a quite interesting one. It said loss of green space quantity can be offset by increased green space quality.
Mhm.
And that also helps people to improve their mental health, I think, to increase the quality of the existing green space.
Okay, it reminds me of the Skyway in New York. Does anybody know about this? It's called, I think, the Skyway Park, and it's in Manhattan. And it was a train line, and it goes up in the air. And it was a very rough part of town with lots of very despised spaces, as Ria calls them. And the government turned the whole train line into a thin linear park. And you can look this up. And it's had exactly the effect that you've just described, Cindy. This linear park in Manhattan has turned these really scary places into a really desirable place to live. The High Line. Thank you, Danny. You're right, not the Skyline, the High Line. So, and it was probably not terribly expensive project. And the one downside is that the train line isn't there anymore. And you might say, but that's no good. You know, trains are good, right? They're public transport, low energy. But in fact, the train line wasn't used, and it was industrial train line. And I think that your comment, Cindy, about that conversion in Seoul, I think I know the one you're talking about, where they've basically converted a raised freeway, into a linear park, like the High Line. And the downside is the road is gone. But the upside, of course, is that there's now a huge new community asset. And if there's adequate public transport, then people will just use that instead. So it's a disincentive to use the road, but it's not a tax, or it's not a penalty for using the road. It's just giving the people something that's better as a replacement. Does anyone else want to comment? What do you know about the High Line, Danny? Are you there?
Actually, can I add?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, I feel like despite these kind of inconveniences, however, I know that in London and New York, they are experimenting with reducing the road capacity, and obviously it created some inconveniences. But however, more people started to come to these streets and use the space as a kind of a gathering space. So in a sense, it kind of benefits the city and the local economy instead of just a place where people just pass by in their cars.
And I think your comment, Cindy, about the replacement of the space, taking the road away. I mean, imagine someone in Seoul saying, oh man, it's so hard to drive into the city now that they took that freeway away. And that person's neighbor will say, hey, shut up. We got a new park, you know? And so you'll find that if you do beneficial projects like this that benefit the community, then you get defenders on your team. The government gets defenders to defend its work. I'm sorry, Cindy, you're going to show me who you picked to do this work.
I choose Ian McHarg because I read about his back to nature model.
Mhm.
He's trying to bring more natural environment back into the growing cities. I think he might have knowledge and experience to deal with this problem.
Okay, right. He sounds like a good guy to have on our team. Alrighty. How about Leanne and Jeremy?
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, unshare. Thanks. All right.
Can you see the screen?
You might need to zoom in slightly. It's a bit
Okay. All right.
microscopic for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the issue that I concentrated on was urban sprawl.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm aware that two other people had already done it.
Mm.
So I'll just kind of like just go through like why I think so. So urban sprawl, the reason why I think it's the issue for like traffic congestion is because as you can see in like the loopy diagram, when more concentration is put onto the roads and road infrastructure, then it kind of creates like a more attractive landscape for people to own private cars.
Mhm.
So therefore, like in a sense, like it kind of makes driving cars more practical, and urban sprawls kind of make the distances to services much greater. So in a sense, like it wouldn't be practical for you to walk or even take the bus at times. So then therefore, that's why more cars are added to the road, leading to traffic congestion. And who is to blame here? So the people to blame here, I guess, would be the transport department and the urban planning and sustainable department, and also partly due to, I guess, like this, the people themselves either wanting to own a private car instead of taking public transport.
Mhm.
And the actors would be those who are in the departments themselves and the people driving the cars. So then, so then it kind of leads to this diagram where all of these things kind of lead up to these symptoms, where urban sprawl is a symptom, reduced public transport funding because less people are taking public transport and prioritizing like private transport, and then like leads to poor quality of public transport, which leads to more people wanting to use private cars, and then leading to traffic congestion and so forth. And
just I might just ask you a question. Sorry, I wasn't going to interrupt, but I just want to ask a question. Why is it prestigious to own a car? Like, why is a car a status symbol, do you think?
Like if we look at our American if we look at the Americans, they always mention that owning a car is freedom, right? Because the car is basically your own, and you get to do whatever you want, go wherever you want, and then like this kind of builds that kind of prestige and kind of like building like that thing where you can use it as your own and go anywhere and have the freedom. So in a sense, a lot of people have this kind of mentality, although they might not think so. And even to say, when I was researching on examples like Singapore, where they control like cars pretty well because of like the high tax rate and the high costs. However, like a lot of people still wanted to buy cars because it was seen as like a prestigious symbol, whether it because like they could choose to drive anywhere they wanted and not take public transport like everyone else.
Okay.
So,
The only reason I brought that up is that people's desire to have a car is actually not a societal system. So it would be more like the people who make cars look prestigious. So the salespeople, the marketing people, Elon Musk, people who make cars look desirable. This would be the system. If you could identify that there may not be a system that causes cars to be prestigious. There may not be a single organization or group or department or company alone that makes cars prestigious. So you wouldn't be able to point to that as a societal system causing prestigious status for car owners, but it's a problem. So the people's love of their cars and the feeling that I have that I'm just not going to be able to go anywhere and do what I want and listen to my own music. This is a problem. And it needs to be in there somewhere, like in the symptoms, it's like car addiction or status anxiety or something. These would be symptoms, but on its own, it's not a societal system. It doesn't have a boss. It doesn't. Yeah. Apart from that, it's pretty clear. Thank you. And do you want to go as well, Leanne? Are you there? We're running a bit late. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the issue I had a look at was low income households and the disadvantages they have in terms of mobility and transportation. So usually low rental, social housing and poor quality houses are located in outer city suburbs, whereas jobs and opportunities are usually located in inner city suburbs. So this already impacts the low income earners as they already have less access to cars, and instead of walking or riding a bike to work, which is free, they will have to rely on public transport, which costs money. So looking at the loopy diagram, we see that the population growth leads to poor urbanization, which also leads to poverty and unemployment. Whereas if they had access to modes of transportation, such as walking or bike riding to work, that decreases employment. And so we're looking at restoring the urban environment. So in terms of the entrepreneur that I chose, I had a look at Enrique, because he heavily focused on providing quality urbanism for poor neighborhoods. And he focused on improving the pedestrian sidewalks and bike paths, as he believed that it was a powerful symbol of equality and that it may be someone's only mode of transport.
Jeremy, I cut you off, sorry. You were going to tell me the entrepreneur that you picked.
oh yeah, it was also Enrique Peñalosa
As well.
Yeah, because he prioritized public transport and affordable mobility for the whole of Bogota instead of catering to cars because they were mostly used by the upper classes.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. All right, David and Kate, how did you guys go?
I didn't fully understand what was to be done this week, but I'll show you just the changes I've made.
Okay, cheers.
No worries. So yeah, based off what you said here. Sorry, one sec. Yeah, based off the notes in the comments here, I've altered the loopy diagram. So it reads a bit better instead of saying less retail, less driving, just retail, profit and driving, and just sort of seeing how it actually works and fixing things up.
Okay.
So that turned out okay. I still couldn't really find a break in it because the working from home is such a cyclical thing. It's hard to find a way to break it.
David, when you run this, what's the one that you bump up to start with or bump down?
I bump up working from home.
Working from
as the
home.
new
Okay.
role.
Sorry. Thank you. I wasn't.
No worries.
All right. I
Um,
see. Yep. And so there's a whole
and-
lot of reinforcing loops here that cause some of these problems like mental health.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Good.
And then, sorry, let's get to my other tab here. One sec.
You were saying you're having trouble breaking those loops because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I think so. I just have to pick sort of one or maybe two issues and simplify it. Like you said at the start of the lesson,
Yeah.
instead of looking at it at a broader scale. So I'll have to do that.
So some of the teams made really elaborate loopy diagrams, which is good because it gives us a view of the entire problem. But we would hone in on the most serious tight loop within that, the most serious cycle within that network, because then it's easier, as David says, if we can actually just jam the wedge in to one loop, you can break the entire thing.
Yeah. And then in reference to the rest of the document here, yes, the name is sort of, it's a question of, does working from home benefit the environment more or the economy? What sort of mental state will our citizens be in if we do not go back to operating in a normal way? And how does it take its toll on different aspects? And I think I've kind of answered my question here. That what I want to focus specifically is on the mental and social state of the citizens. So I think that's the loopy that I will sort of gear towards and really focus in. The difference in the landscape is that it's obviously the global travel has now allowed new disease to spread. So workplaces are dangerous and it creates a breeding ground for other issues to arise. And what was changed was the actors now are chief governing bodies and scientists, as well as small business owners.
Okay.
And then in this diagram over here, you pointed out that a symptom, this reducing carbon footprint is symptom a negative that we're thinking of?
Usually, but sometimes symptoms can be a good thing for some of these systems.
I think what was confusing in my diagram, because I had all these negatives that stem from commercial, retail, and state government, and I had one positive, but I needed arrows to point the opposite way to sort of reinforce the idea that this is actually a positive symptom, unless you want me to stick to negative symptoms to keep the diagram cleaner.
It could be either, but I generally said to stick to negative symptoms because the negative symptoms help us with our narrative.
Yeah,
we need to solve this problem because of bad, right? Ultimately, if you're pitching a solution, you're going to have to come up with some benefits, but you would do it differently for the benefits. You would have the benefits appear in another kind of illustration showing how big the benefits are, how good the money is, how mental health improves. So you'd have a different diagram.
No worries. I'll keep that separate. Thank you.
All righty. And Kate, do you want to show us yours?
Yeah. So for me, will I share the screen because I haven't been using it. Yeah. From last week, I have like changed a little bit of the loopy diagram because last time it may be too complicated. So I simplify it into the main loopy about the relationship between the population and the urbanization and the suburb. So it means the urbanization reform actually gave the opportunity to have more new population than previous. So it's kind of cause more crowding. And if it's like more crowding, it's maybe called more suburbs. But at the same time, suburbs and in another way affect more urbanization. So my main problem is overall. And yeah, and according to last time change, I changed it to urbanization bill for new RAPs traps there cause more urbanization. So which is maybe more specific on the question of the over-urbanization. Yeah, I think the people may affect me, maybe the Franking,
Mhm.
also our research person, because they always like to ask for more public space
Okay.
on the urbanization.
Okay, cool. I see there's still quite a few other comments. You guys all need to finish fixing this up and copy it across.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's looking good. I'm glad
Thank
you're
you.
incorporating my solutions. All right, Errol and Georgius, what did you guys get up to?
Yep. So I started looking at waste.
Yep.
Just off the comments from last week, I don't think I really touched on. It was kind of really broad, and there was a lot of comments kind of saying that it wasn't making sense. So I kind of fixed that up this time.
Yep.
Let me just screen share. Yep. Started looking at waste, and we could say that 74 million tons of waste is going either towards landfill or sending it out overseas. So a big problem is household waste, which is our foods and stuff. 3.1 million of that is going, which is decaying, going to landfills, turning into methane gas, and is damaging the environment, causing pollution. So at the moment, we produce about 2.5 tons of plastic each year, and 13% is recovered, while 85% ends up in landfill, which is not good. So part of the Australian government, the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment are the go-to people. So kind of, these are the people that make that decision and kind of change what's happening. And we kind of looked at Andrew McKelvey, the Secretary, Department of Agriculture. Maybe he's one of the main contributors to making a decision as part of that. So the fixes that failed, I kind of looked back on the comments. I was just maybe listing fixes last time, but so this is what Australia's done. So Australia thought it'd be a good idea to send their waste to China. This has backfired on them, as they're no longer accepting rubbish from any foreign countries. The new policy was implemented on the 1st of January 2018. So banning all paper, plastics and textiles imported into China. So Australia's solution to the China ban. So even though it was banned, Australia's waste continues to grow, and they thought it would be a good idea just to send it somewhere else. So now they're sending it to places like Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Malaysia, and Thailand. But this is still an ongoing problem, which hasn't been met. So I guess we have the problem of we can't recycle our own rubbish and we're spending millions in exporting. So maybe one way they could have fixed that further was separating the processing food of organic foods and other waste with technologies such as anaerobic digestion. They're kind of like pellets, which they kind of mix into the plastic. But the problem was there wasn't much support and it was too costly. So they kind of backfired again. So maybe solutions could be to pitch the idea to aiming to reduce organic waste. So maybe this could be done by composting food scraps. So banning single-use plastics, which they're already doing, plastic bags. So maybe we can get to local governments to take white goods, and electronic waste could be dispersed into retail shops, I guess. So just becoming more aware and educating people.
Okay.
So the loopy diagram kind of goes off. I've kind of changed this up again into the main factors of waste, I guess. So we're trying to reduce, reuse, recycle, recover the energy and dispose of that. So that's mixed up between residential, commercial, industry. industrial, which is, overall branched by the government.
Mhm.
I've clicked out of the loopy link, so without saving it. So I think I went a bit loopy with that. But I am making one as we speak, just to react that. This is my ecosystem. I've kind of split that up into reducing recycling, going from governments to the private companies such as like Cleanway and the waste holders, which is us.
Yep. So you called out, is it Andrew McAlpine before that you called out?
Metcalf, Andrew Metcalf.
Andrew Metcalf. He would be an actor. So on this diagram over here, where you've called him out as one of the key people, he would be one of your actors. So actors are always people. There might be people in role. There might be someone in a role like a garbage collector, but it's usually a single person. And if you can name them, it's even better.
Yeah, I did find him. He was in the House of Parliament. He was in one of the Senates.
Good.
But yeah, he's pretty up there. And I think if we can get to him, then, we can make a change.
Yeah. All right. So just put him among your actors. So this is part of our evolving toolkit. So in the second part of this course, we're going to use all this stuff to create a toolkit for others to go in and fix this.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And how about Georgius?
Hello.
Go for it, Georgius.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen right now.
Please do.
Okay. So last week I might a bit behind with the loopy, and right now I'm currently making like the prop, and so I'm doing this kind of analysis on the Sydney affordable housing crisis. And the landscape is that majority of Australian, especially with the low income family, pay half of their income on the rent. So many people is having difficulty in actually paying their rent, and also because house prices is extremely high, and it rises easily each year. So it's kind of making this many low income people having difficulty in purchasing a house and also paying their rent, and also especially with the young adults who usually move out. I mean, when they're maybe 18 or something like that. So a young adult in Sydney may have difficulty in actually purchasing a house in Sydney.
Okay.
And also the cost would be since Sydney is so what I'm saying in Sydney. So I meant in CBD. So there's like a problem in the supply chain. So many people have a high demand on purchasing a house in Sydney, but the supply is actually reducing because many people, some of the people actually kind of hoarding the house. So hoarding the house, and many low income people, some of the houses, some of the people cannot actually purchase the house because the supply is already ran out, or maybe it's too expensive to actually purchase. And the other causes would be the rapid urbanization. So many people would likely to actually move to the city or CBD because majority of job is located in the CBD. So many people would likely to live in the CBD, and the high demand of this housing in CBD is still increasing each year. And also, the other cost would be the housing prices that is rising each year.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So the fix that fails. So the solution that the government of Australia is handling right now is like pushing the development of affordable housing and apartment in Sydney. they're trying to actually increase the number of house and apartment in Sydney.
Mhm.
However, the price of private property rises quickly, and people with a high income can purchase easily rather than the low income citizens. So some of the low income citizens cannot afford, so they cannot, so they're having difficulty in actually purchasing the house.
Mhm.
So it's like, so there's like land hoarding, some kind of like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and this is my loopy diagram. So I'm trying to get used to the loopy. So this is what my understanding of this diagram.
Mhm.
What I interpret. So the government is trying to actually increasing the supply.
Yep.
But because if there's like a high supply, there's going to be a high demand also, and also if people from the suburban area heard about this, they going to they want to actually purchasing the house that the government supplying,
Mhm.
but the supply is going to reduce, and the price is going to getting high.
Yep.
Which resulting in like affordability crisis,
Mhm.
and it's kind of affecting the house demand also. I mean, like yeah, it's kind of so the house price is also in the house price is kind of affecting the affordability.
Okay. Good. It's a nice simple diagram because it shows at least one main loop. So the idea is that hopefully the problem we're looking at, we can zoom in enough to get it down to sort of one main loop or one main network that is keeping this thing going forever and making it worse. And then it gets easier to just say, well, if we broke it here, it would stop. Or if we change this connection here, it would go the other way, or whatever we can to fix it. Okay. All right. That leaves us to, sorry, and team 6, Sophia and Danny.
Hello.
Hiya.
So Dennis, I think he's not here.
Yeah, I don't
They
think
are
he
not
is
in the
either.
class.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't uploaded my changes because I'm still working. I just shown to you. Because I took a quite complicated problem. Yeah, and it's like I can work and make the diagram like bigger and bigger and bigger. It's quite difficult to simplify. If, for example, I'm taking this moment immigration. Yeah, I'm really I stuck on it because immigration leads to growing population, and city growing and big cities leads to bigger problems. Yeah, and I can go on, go on and go on.
Okay, so the main, it's good in our description of the landscape. So the landscape description says to us, we have this problem because something started a while ago that made this problem start, and now we've got these extra things happening that make the problem worse. So that's what you get in between describing the landscape and attempting to describe the cause. And so that gives us some hints as to what the balls are in this situation diagram. But it's the case in Loopy that Loopy will do a certain amount for us. It's a modeling tool. It's a real simple one, so it's not going to be able to capture every dynamic. But in this case, what I see that's kind of missing is that if one of the starting problems is employment, is there some sort of relationship between the city growing? So the city grows and produces waste and pollution and traffic. Do any of these things feed back on employment, for example?
It's actually it's why I put employment. It's because if so if it's more work available, it's it will bring more people in a city. So it's like one way in and one way out.
Yeah.
So
that's
actually,
right.
more people leads to the lack of job, and more jobs leads to the more people in the city.
Yep, I get
So
it.
actually, yeah, if city growing, it's propose more job places. And
Okay.
I think so. I'm still thinking about
All right. All right.
how to explain it in simple way.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's good. I think that's good. And is Danny C in today? I don't.
No,
No,
he's
he's
not.
not. Okay,
He's
we'll
not
have to.
here.
We'll have to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, and actually, why I also took that problem, because we are talking about Ken Young, our entrepreneur,
Yes.
because he's not only trying to solve that environmental problem, but he's building the buildings in with high population cities, like tall buildings, and trying to make it like self efficient. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. That's good. And
I'll
we,
stop. Yeah,
yeah, we can do Danny's one another time.
I'm trying to find.
Sure.
uh,
Okay.
Stop share. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry about that. And that brings us to the three, Lee, Chang, and Esji. I don't think we've got Esji today, but I think we've got Lei and Zhang. You guys there?
Yeah.
Yes.
We are
Yeah.
here.
All right, far away.
Shang, you want to go first or?
I can go first.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I share the screen. Yeah. Can you see the screen that I share?
Yes.
Yeah. So since the revise from last week, so my core problem is the demolishment of traditional architecture and buildings in China, and then the landscape and history is because in 1978, and the government planned to improve the economic growth and the national economic since the Chinese economic reform and open up this decision, the more and more land were used for economic growth, like commercial function. In this case, many old buildings and traditional buildings were replaced and demolished by the residential building, like real estate building and commercial building.
Mhm.
So it is the main landscape because of the Chinese economic growth plan. And it caused the overraise of new buildings that occupy the land use of traditional buildings. So the government decided to demolish them and replace a big but the historic, because the historical building are represented the history, past, and culture of city. Um, so it is not the good thing in long term. That is so. At the same time, it also caused the house price increasing as the growth of the new building. So, so the system of this problem is economic system, government, and the builder. And
Mhm.
the actor would be the economy, politician, and people. I think it's more related to the builder, it more related to the investor, I think. And to fix the fall, there are two main ways to fix the fall. Firstly, in long-term consideration, I think the government could encourage and improve the allowance of for the reconstruction project that is not only protect the historical building, but also it can increase the value that inside of the traditional building. At the same time, the government could increase the house price that it would reduce the overdevelopment of new building and balance the land use. as shown in the loopy diagram here. So in the loopy diagram, it shows the, so at the beginning, so the so here is the development of the building. So as the increasing of the development of building, we got the increase of the new building here. However, as the over development of the new building is caused the increase of the house price, and at the same time, development of the building lead to the cost, lead to the growth of the population, and it lead to the increasing of land use. However, is reduce the land use of the traditional building. So here's the way that as the development as the increasing of the development of the city, so the government could set the policy that encourage the reconstruction. So the policy of the encouragement of the reconstruction could improve the value of traditional building. And the overall is the historic past and culture of the city could be retained.
I think it's a good diagram. I think this is a good diagram. I would question about whether the more new buildings they make results in overall house prices increasing. I'm not sure what the situation is in the location of this problem, but I know it's the case here in outer Melbourne that the more houses that they build, the more they saturate the market. And then, so, and then I think the other thing that you could include in this is that traditional buildings are quite costly to maintain. So if you want to solve this problem, you would need to make new buildings more expensive so that traditional buildings are competitive. And then you'd need to have some way to deal with the cost of traditional buildings. But I see the situation that you're diagramming here, and I see the value of traditional buildings because they're low carbon. At least they're already built, and so no new materials are needed for new housing if traditional buildings can be refurbished. So it's a good diagram. I think it's still a bit too complicated, but you should see if you can simplify it a bit just so that it shows us how we're stuck with more new buildings. So if you build a new building, something happens, someone benefits, and then they want more new buildings. And so you see it's success to the successful is the name of I think is the name of one of the 7 problem kinds. So there's these 7 kinds of problems. I think it's probably success to the successful. Yeah. STS, right. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the other problem that you guys covered?
Yeah, I will show my screen.
Okay.
Can you see it?
I can't see it. It's coming, I think. Still not quite there.
Oh, sorry, my Zoom just crashed.
Okay, do you want me to pull it up here? Or I suppose you can't see, right? All right. Can someone else take over, or do you want me to put mural up, or what would you like me to do?
Hey, Lei, would you want me to share the screen that you can talk? I might share the screen.
I think he's frozen. Oh no, he moved. Are you there, Lei? Can you hear us? I don't think so.
Oh, sorry, Greg. My Zoom just crashed due to share the screen. Sorry.
Can Zhang share his screen? Because he knows.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, I can share screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for last week, I did the problem of the daylight, like the daylight saving in China, but you give me the feedback like do the other investing like the finished building and also the abandoned building in China. Why there's so many empty city in China?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a better problem because I couldn't quite understand. I know daylight savings is bad in some ways, but I couldn't see how it was part of a persistent problem. This is a better choice.
Yeah. So I was like confused. Should I still go with the daylight saving or I go a new program?
This is good.
Yeah. So like the landscape of the problem is like the requirement of the economic development. So due to like the economic boom in China and try to shift from the rural area to the urban lifestyle. And the cost of this program will be like the bubble of the big picture of the economic and also like the growth rate of the housing investment is not catching up with the demand of the sale, and also lack of funding and the lack of the investigation of the local community. So I put the system into at the investment, so the bank and the government, the builder. So I draw the ecological diagram. It's quite simple because when I dig into this problem, I found like it's more complicated than I thinking. And I still working on the loopy diagram. I put all the like the key element in the diagram, but I can't really finish the loop.
Okay. You should probably have unfinished buildings in that loop as well, because there you can have the symptoms in there. So the loopy diagram often includes the symptoms as well. So it might have the actors, it might have the systems, but usually it has a couple of the symptoms in there because the loopy loop usually shows the symptoms getting worse as it goes around.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the entrepreneur, I can't identify like the Jeff fact. He got a really strong like relationship between the policy maker and also the industrial investor. So I think he is quite a fit person for my problem. So he kind of like, because I think the government like the trigger for the trigger or the chain reaction happening.
Yep, it usually is. Okay, good. All right, thank you. Good roundup. Jane and Kyle, do you want to show us yours?
Yep, I'll share my screen.
Please do.
Can I see it?
I can.
Okay. So the problem I'm focusing on is aging and maintenance of infrastructure under the background of past dependence and continuing growth of demand. The term infrastructure is kind of fundamental facilities of or a system that provides services for economic functions like roads, bridges, sewers, networks. So the problem is because of the rising population and promotion of urbanization, city need to accommodate more residents and floating populations, which causing the gross demand for food, energy, and transportation. But instead of reconstruction, most of the final decision always come to expansion, which also brought out the crisis of aging and rising maintenance fees. One of the key factors is I think it's the past dependency, like making decisions based on historical preference and habits, even if there's a more effective alternative. Certainly, the planners and the policymakers bring more focus on the sustainable living now, like try to reduce the maintenance expenses by making the infrastructure more sustainable and decrease part of the impact of excessive dependence on daily life. But as shifting the burden, the problem is still out there. Like the change of policy is always less than expected, and it obstructs the reform and constrain the advancement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is the societal economy, like the system, including government, construction industry, and individual enterprise. The solution of the problem is resistant changes due to the past dependency, that making the technological progress stagnated to the industry. Also accelerate the process of urbanization due to continuous expansion, like forming an ecology that is not friendly to the environment. And the loopy diagram is simulating the problem, which due to the population growth, there's more there comes more infrastructures, and then there will be more a economy issue for maintenance. So it's like can afford to fix. So it need to extend to build more infrastructures, which bring back to the problem to create the loop. And the solution given here, one is making the infrastructure more sustainable and effective. So the aging of the infrastructure will decrease with the extension of the life cycle, and also try to drive the investment to make the maintenance and innovation development of the infrastructures.
Okay. Before you go on, is there another? Does everybody here know what a path dependency is? It's a special term, and it basically means that we're stuck doing something because a decision that someone took a long time ago put everything in place. For example, the keyboard on your computer, the QWERTY keyboard, that key layout was decided 80 years ago for dumb reasons to do with the way typewriters work, but we're stuck with this. This is a path dependency. And I wanted to make the comment on this loopy diagram, Kyle, that is it the case that the city is growing so fast that they can't retire the old infrastructure? Like, I understand that if you're able to build new infrastructure on top of the old stuff, so you shut down the old infrastructure and you just rough it for a while because the pressure isn't too bad, it costs a lot less than when you've got heaps of people using the infrastructure and the new stuff has to be built entirely around the old stuff before you can retire the old infrastructure. And this makes the costs way, 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 way higher. I'm wondering if, is that part of this path dependency? The pressures are so great, we can't even let go of the old stuff, even if we wanted to. So
yeah, I think so. And it also reminds me like the highlight. I think it is like as a solution to this problem as well.
Okay, and who did you pick as your solutions person?
It's
Yep, this guy is very popular.
Yeah, I think his approach can help with the problem. Like as an urban planner and writer and lecturer, he like the intervention of the new urbanism will make people less dependent on many infrastructures to increase its life cycle and reduce the cost of maintenance, make it healthy and dynamic. And it could also reduce the pollution and consumption caused for design infrastructure. And as a writer and lecturer, he advocates the approach through presentation and education I think it could cope with the thinking area for positive density as a way. Because the activity communicates and cooperates with the industry professionals and local policymakers. This can also influence the change to the policy and attract investment, and also as a way to respond to the positive dependency.
Okay. All right. Yep, I agree. I think you would. And Jane, did you want to show us your one?
Yeah.
How's your Zoom behaving itself today?
Fine so far.
All right.
Can you see?
I can.
Cool. So I was looking at the problem of increasing house sizes and how it's increasing our energy use in homes. So the size of our homes have doubled, more than doubled in the last 60 years. And then that's sort of created urban growth, urban sprawl, and then sustainability is not being achieved. One of your comments that you added was about builders including sort of options in terms of cost, and then there's an incentive for the home builder to go with the bigger size. So then I think that also included that in home landscape, but that's probably where the builder's probably still getting that cost back for themselves, having a bigger house because they've got to add in labour and other things. So then going up to the cause, they're probably the biggest cause, I think, the most influential in terms of the energy use is having less people in homes, giving that feeling of them using less energy, even though there's more energy being used because you've still got a big house.
Yep.
So then the actors I had were builders, homeowners, government, councils, suppliers, trades, all of those. And then in the systems diagram, I added in occupants based on the symptom of working from home and having sort of space for families. That's the only change I had from last week. And then I sort of changed that to home buyers instead of owners, I think I had before. And then, so this was my initial loop that I had that was sort of recurring. And then I added in design guidelines to change out the size of people's homes.
Okay.
Which could also be like putting maybe a limit on the space per person that you have, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yep. And then I went with Jeff's spec as well.
Okay.
So like in terms of his, so I have 4 main things. So his influence in terms of design guidelines, his understanding of sustainability and climate, inclusive design, so thinking about different households and different demographics, and then in terms of his approach about a lot more education and pilot projects, which I think is quite important for this, in demonstrating to people how their homes are being used and the energy that they're using that they can't necessarily see. I think is quite important when you're thinking about the public and the decisions that they're allowed to make in terms of their own homes. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. I mean, with these entrepreneurs are highly skilled people, and that they have multiple capabilities. And Jeff Speck's an educator, and so I'm personally would always say it would be good to get someone who can educate the government. But I'd always say that in this case, you're going to come up against the builders. So anytime you try and take on some aspect of buildings that's going to constrain the size of them, or make them smaller or make them harder to build, you're going to have the builders complaining that they'll make less money.
Yeah.
And so the kind of help you're going to need is going to need to be someone who can talk money to builders, or someone who is a builder, an entrepreneur who is a builder, who's somehow managed to succeed anyway. So a sustainability, rock star who has made any new sustainability laws work for him or her. And then you've got someone on your team that you can turn around to the builders and say, look, it works for her, it can work for you. And otherwise you're talking to the opposition, and you would need that help along with Jeff. And that applies to all of you here. So you're thinking about the people that you have to convince in order to end the problem. Alrighty, so that takes us to, I think that takes us to Jeff and Danny. Thank you for that. Thanks, Jane. Jeff and Danny, you guys there?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, go for it, Jeff.
Here, my network is not good. Can you share the screen, please? Sorry.
All right. Okay, just give me a sec. All right, let me just find your work. SG, Jeff and Danny.
It's on the top.
I'm sorry, you're right. Okay. And this just goes up forever, doesn't it? Okay, there we go. Sorry, it's very small. I might zoom in. Oops. Okay. Wow. All right, go for it. Can you read that?
I don't think you're sharing screen.
No, I don't think I am either. Thank you for that. How's that? Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, pretty small font, but I can read it. I hope everyone else can.
So our problem is the effectiveness of government investing in the solar power projects on the willingness of the public to install solar panels. So our problem is mainly focusing on the according to the feedback that you gave us last week. So we mainly focus on the trust of the solar. So under this problem, so we find that the manufacturer and the supplier of the solar power, solar power system, have some problem that a bad manufacturer quality and so
Do you want me to go over this way? Yeah.
Yeah, after sales problems. So this one lead to the untrust of the solar, so that the household don't want to spend too much money on this, because this system and the supplier of this system is not so reliable. And our solution is that the government policy support is quite important in this system. So if the government sets a kind of industrial standard, it will rules the market of the solar panel suppliers, so it can supply better qualities of the service, so the people can gain more trust on this solar panel system. That's what we have found. So it's a quite complex system. So after that, we look at the feedback. So we split this massive problem into two parts. One is how the government financial supplies of this solar power project, and the other one is like more related to the policy support.
Okay. I think this is good. I think you've simplified it nicely. I would add to this second one of the main symptoms. So one of your main symptoms was poor quality solar, right?
Yeah.
Because if the solar systems are poor, then it's going to hurt people's trust. So that would be something that contributes to this kind of trap where people want to buy cheap solar, but then they get low quality solar, which then breaks. And then this has an effect on everybody trusting solar power because they hear stories that, oh, I had it put on my roof and then it stopped working. So I feel like if you could include that as a symptom, like if I look at let me look at your diagram. Let's have a look at the symptoms. Okay, savings, price of energy. Okay, so these things at the top here really need to be the symptoms of the problem. So this is a symptom, right? Bad installations are a symptom. Erosion of trust, poor maintenance or missing maintenance, increased household budget, increased price of energy. Okay. So this business here, this is a symptom that leads to or is involved with ruining the trust.
Yeah.
So I would include that in your diagram because you're going to have to do something about that, or any kind of solution you come up with is going to have to try and deal with poor quality work. And as I said, poor quality work is caused by people rushing, people paying too little, lack of quality assessment. There's a number of things that cause poor quality merchandise. In fact, I explained that a few weeks ago talking about insulation and how that went bad in Australia. But I think you're pretty close. And who have you hired? Jeff again?
Yeah, we look into two types of persons, so Jeff and Majora.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly Jeff, we thought that his strong relationship with policymakers, investors, and industry professionals would gain more confidence in vendors and investors to invest in solar energy and potentially expand the capacity of the efficiency of solar energy that would benefit the city's development.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of relationship with the local community, we thought that Majora had a more strong understanding of the as she mentioned that she's a connector of two vastly different worlds, so the community and the greater city. So she would have that confidence in connecting these two and further advocate for the public in terms of like rental costs for the solar panels, and then how local governments or policymakers could create solutions for people to get more access into solar energies, and also contribute in gaining trust in these sustainable solutions.
Okay, so these are two very similar problems, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of them is about whether the government should subsidize solar.
Yeah.
Or the problems with that. And I think are you suggesting here that when the government subsidizes solar, then nobody else wants to pay for it, or no one else can be bothered buying it if they're not eligible for support from the government, perhaps?
Yeah. So yeah, they're not eligible. There's not much support from the government to sponsor or help to allow more access to solar panels, because there's issues of affordability and then accessibility in like different household budgets.
Okay, and you've worked that into the same diagrams as the second problem, yes?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, it's always harder to try and solve two problems at once, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you should probably split that out. I agree with this one here. It's a problem when the government makes things cheap for some people, it puts the other people off from buying that thing. Suffice to say that Australia is unusual. If you, in Australia, in Victoria, the government pays for you to generate excess solar at a very high rate. It's something like 40 cents a kilowatt hour. And for every household that got on that scheme that has solar, the 40-cent feed-in tariff, there are 2 other households who bought solar that weren't going to get that benefit, but they bought solar anyway. So that's an example of where the government stimulus has worked. The stimulus got people to buy solar and they were paid the stimulus, but it also caused other people to buy solar as well. So it sort of kicked off a little revolution. This hasn't happened in other countries. Australia is unusual. But the problem you're talking about here is a real problem for sure. Alrighty, thank you for that. Do you want to unshare? And I think we just have one last team. I'll drag this off. Actually, it's me sharing, isn't it? So I think we just have left one. We've just got Georgia and Noah.
Yeah, I will share the screen.
Yes, please do, Noah.
Yep. All right, so my problem look into high pollution in slum. So I make the changes that you suggest. So looking at the community of colors or poor communities, living in space with low amenity, such as green space and public park. They was not consulted at how has a facility being placed in the neighborhood, as well as the problem of leadership that are predominantly middle class and white. So I make some changes to the loopy diagram, so sort of expand more into the loop. So we got the corruption issue, which contribute to health hazard being placed in slum areas, and then contribute to the air and water pollution. This then lead to low immunity, low chance of employment opportunities, and again contributed to properties and strengthen the social division between the lower class, middle class, and higher class, and then just went back in a loop. Also adding the environmentalist activist option here, sort of work with the corruption as well as the health hazard being in slum. And then just fixing up the ecosystem as well. So now I have the system, the symptom being the social division, low immunity, poverty, and poor health outcome. So it's the same with the societal system, urban planners, and and for the person that I chosen for this issue, actually I chose Matura Carter. I think one of her projects as South Bronx also addressed the pollution and the employment. She also suggests the decision making to be given to the local community, as well as advocate for zoning and land use regulation.
Cool. Okay. Good. That's a good, strong example with nice, simple illustrations. And
so then,
yep, go on. Do we have Georgia as well, or just yourself?
Georgia is here, so
I think you might be muted. Oh, yep, not anymore.
Yep. Oh, good. So my one was about the lack of net zero buildings in Australia. I guess specifically residential. And so with the landscape, I just kind of rewrote it to be more about the history of the fossil fuel industry in Australia, and it's why it's such a big contributor to the economy. And then for the cause, that was more just about the lack of legislation to do with like the star ratings, and yeah, so people aren't forced to have energy efficient homes. So that's the cause that I put. I've just edited my fixes that fail. So sorry. Yeah, the net zero housing requirements are out of date and have not been updated since their introduction in 2011. So it's been the 6 stars. Although I just did receive an email today saying that might go to 7 stars next year in the NCC. So there you go. And then also there were a few rebates, or a rebate for low-income households to upgrade old heating solutions. But sorry, what I wrote. Yeah, so I think it was for renters, but because some of the owners that rent out the properties, they're not technically low income, so there was a bit of a like loophole in the system. So then they brought in some legislation to rectify that. So the answer was legislation, basically, to make it a law to have a certain amount of.
So George, you know, the fixes that fail, it's really a list of things not to try again. So
yeah, I guess the actual fail was like the middle bit, and then there was a fix after that as well.
Because I would say about this net zero housing requirements are out of date because, you know, it's been 6 stars and they haven't increased the stars. My understanding is that the reason that they hadn't increased the stars is either because builders cheat, or they can't, the builders can't make money reaching 7 stars, or it's very hard to certify a 7-star building. It was one of those 3 things. I can't remember. But the harder that you made it, like the higher the star rating as a minimum, the harder it was for builders who fought back, or some builders, crappy builders, cheated. And so that's the failure of the fix, if you like. And it sort of suggests that the solution to this problem might not necessarily be jacking up the stars to 10. Because you might say, oh, well, why don't we just keep pushing the stars all the way up to 10? That'll solve it. But you can see already that because they've had trouble getting it above 6, 7, yeah, might not be the solution.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know if the loopy is like relevant then. I didn't really change it, to be honest. The only thing with the second one is that I just, instead of clicking up on the fossil fuel industry, I clicked up on the environmental activists.
Okay.
And that was the result. So because it's a longer loop, I guess, originally it wasn't really making any difference to the net zero homes. I probably should have added another extra node up the top. But
so
yeah.
It looks like from this loop that when you increase the amount of environmental activism, you get net zero homes, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's a solution. It doesn't have to be the only one or the best one, but it works in this illustration.
And then going off from that, I also chose Jeff Speck as the entrepreneur.
I think half of all the teams chose this guy.
Yeah. Maybe they just really wrote a really nice profile. I don't know. It's convincing. So yeah, to break the loopy, need more activists in. Well, that's just one way that I chose. And public outcry for net zero. And so to do this, there needs to be a facilitator to strengthen the movement. So I thought Jeff Speck had shown the ability to create pilot projects, which are quite convincing, and also host community workshops to get more people on board. And then also the fact that he includes all demographics and shows everyone like how they will benefit from this change. And also just his general education involvement as well. So just increasing the awareness kind of thing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. That's cool. I think you guys are super lucky last. It's just 3:47 at my end here. And so it'd probably be a good idea if you want to unshare. Great. Right. So probably be a good idea now to take a break. Do you want to come back at 4? That gives us kind of 12 minutes to go get a drink of water, and then I can pick it up again at 4. How's that? Alrighty. Okay. See a few thumbs. Great. Alrighty. Pause recording.
Probably you'll be unsurprised to realize that the rate of mortality and cold-related mortality was associated with lower average living room temperatures. So people who had houses that were colder were more likely to die from the cold. The really counterintuitive finding was that it was also associated with higher average winter temperatures outside. So places that were warmer during winter had more cold-related mortality. So that seems a bit strange, but let's dig into it a bit more by comparing 2 regions. So the south of Finland, which is pretty far north up in Scandinavia, and Athens, which is on the Mediterranean. Now, if you look at the first line of this table, you can see that the increase in mortality for every 1 degree below 18 degrees was 2.2% in Athens, but only 0.3% in Finland. So much higher mortality rate in Athens, despite it being warmer. When we think about why this might be, you can get some hints from the second, third rule. So when it's 7 degrees outside, the average inside temperature in Athens is 19.2, but it's fully 2.5 degrees warmer in Finland because they build their houses properly. They know it's going to be cold. They have good housing to reflect that. Not so much in Athens. And there's a behavioural aspect too. So when it's 7 degrees outside, 3/4 of Finns are wearing warm beanies to keep themselves warm. Only 13% of Athenians doing the same. So I imagine you're probably already skipping ahead to how things are in Australia, where generally we have a temperate climate, but actually we have some pretty cold winters too. Before we get to Australia though, I'm going to take you to Taiwan. So this relationship between cold temperature and mortality has also been shown in places like Taiwan, which is subtropical. And so here you can see mortality on the vertical axis and temperatures on the horizontal axis. And let's take the left one first of all, which is all-cause mortality. You can see a pretty strong relationship there between higher mortality and lower temperatures. And the main things we're interested in here are cardiovascular disease and respiratory disease. They seem to be the biggest causes of mortality that are caused by cold. And you can see here that same pretty strong relationship for cardiovascular and respiratory mortality. So let's get even closer to home and go to New Zealand, because this is where some of the most interesting research has been done. A woman called Philippa Howden Chapman ran a couple of brilliant research trials back in 2007 and 2008. So this first one I want to talk to you about was a randomized trial of putting insulation in 1,350 low-income households. So it's a very simple intervention. Let's put some insulations pretty cheap, but very effective for improving the thermal shell of a house. Now, the first thing to note is that it did reduce energy use. So the insulated houses only had 81% of the energy use of uninsulated houses. So that's a good thing. We're not using so much energy to get to the same goal. And the thing to look at in the top row of this table is the temperature. And the first thing to understand is these are cold temperatures. So these were average bedroom temperatures in winter, 13.5 to 14 degrees. So just to give you a reference point, the WHO recommend 18 degrees as a minimum temperature for, sort of minimum safe temperature for health in winter. So these houses were really cold. And those red boxes I've highlighted there in the intervention group. So before the intervention, before the insulation went in, we're looking at 13.5 degrees, and it went up to 14.2 degrees after the intervention. And you might be thinking, that's not very impressive. That's only half a degree. But let's let's look at the subject experience of householders. So if we look it up, enable on the bottom, houses were asked whether their house was cold most of the time or always. And before the intervention, about 400 of the 550 said, yes, it was. They knew it was cold pretty much all the time. After the intervention, only 100 out of the 550 said it was cold most of the time or always. So clearly that average 0.5 degree boost of indoor temperature was making an impact on their experience of their home. Now, if we look at the benefits that came through physical and mental health, they were pretty widespread. So this study found there was less wheezing, fewer GP visits, fewer days off school for kids, fewer days off work for the adults. And the red boxes here cover a tool called the SF36. So that's scored out of 100, with higher scores being better. And you can see down the bottom that physical health went from 52 to 70. So that's a good boost. But it's also important to note that having a better house, having a warmer house changes your emotional well-being. So that went from 63 to 78. And it also changes your social functioning. You're more likely to be socially connected when you can invite people around to your house, because you're not ashamed of how cold it is and you feel like it's a warm and welcoming place. So your social functioning can go up too. So this is really important physical and mental health impacts from the intervention. Now, the follow-up, the following year from the same research group focused not on insulation but on heating. So they installed efficient heaters in these homes. And this time it was young children with asthma that they were really targeting, because they realised that when homes are this cold, mould and mildew grow like nothing else. They actually had to develop a new scale to measure it, because the current scales that they had available for mould were, is it bigger than a 1 cent piece, a 5 cent piece? And the mould that they were looking at was, across half the wall. They just had to invent a new scale to cope with what they were seeing. And that's particularly tricky for people with respiratory problems. So this was focused on kids with asthma. Again, increasing the heat in these houses, as you can see in the table, the average winter temperature in the living room was 17 in the intervention group and down below 16 in the controls. It's more than a full degree, and about 0.5 degree difference in the children's bedrooms. And the impact of increasing this temperature was, again, less wheezing, less dry cough, fewer respiratory symptoms, fewer visits to the doctor and the pharmacist, lower reports of poor health, and fewer days off school. So wide-ranging health benefits from what is a very simple intervention. Now, we're talking about how data influences policy here, and I think this is a great case study of how it can. So straight off the back of Howland Chapman's research, the Warm Up New Zealand Heat Smart program was implemented. So this went for 5 years, from 2009 to 2013. And the focus here was old homes. So if you had a house that was built before 2000, they tend to be the worst of the housing stock. You could get a subsidy for putting insulation in it. So you got 1/3 of the cost of the insulation back, and that was available to everyone. It also had a low income stream. So you got 60% of your insulation cost back if you were low income. And for these households, you could also access a $1,200 payment towards an efficient heater on the basis that you already had insulation in. So it was a bit of a stepped program.
Sorry, folks, it gets better.
We're pretty much of what they managed to do with this program. So it ended up being an investment of 347 million New Zealand dollars. They managed to insulate 241,000 homes. So it was a massive program when you think the research that underpinned this was only really in the 1,000 home ballpark. It's a huge scale up. The cost benefit analysis at the end of the program showed net benefits of 1.3 billion. So the cost benefit ratio of every $1 that was spent on these quite simple home upgrade interventions yielded $4 back to the society, the government and society at large. Now, as I mentioned, there was some reduction in energy use, but this was dwarfed by the health benefits. So 99% of the total benefits were due to health and reduction in health costs as a result of these interventions. And it wasn't just government programs, it's become a whole ecosystem of making healthier houses in New Zealand. So one example was better rental standards. So mandatory minimum standards in rental homes that came in 2019 that dictate at least one fixed heater that meets a standard of energy efficiency. Insulation is compulsory, ceiling and underfloor. Rooms need to be ventilated properly. So you've got to have at least one opening door or window in each room. We know that mold and mildew is a problem when there's too much condensation. So we've got to get water efficiently away from the house, proper storm, surface and groundwater disposal, and draft stopping of unreasonable gaps too. So pretty comprehensive mandatory rental standards. And then beyond that, there's private sector initiatives too. So ANZ in New Zealand have interest-free home loan top-ups for insulation and heat pumps, discount home loans if your home meets a star rating of energy efficiency. This is a great sheep that hit all the targets, being New Zealand. Sheep are big, and it just creates a very visual representation of whether your house is too cold and too humid. So its wool turns blue if the temperature's getting down too low, below 18 degrees, and its horns go limp if the humidity is too high, but they stay up if the humidity is okay. So people can have this in their house and get that very visual indicator of whether it's a healthy house or not. So the New Zealand work, but also other work around the world, led to the WHO releasing some healthy housing and health guidelines in 2018. Now, when you think of housing, most people's first thought isn't to relate it strongly to health. So it was great to see these guidelines come out very strongly and link housing and health. The temperature exposure question is here. Do residents living in housing where temperatures below 18 degrees have worse health outcomes than those above 18 degrees? And as I mentioned before, cardiovascular and respiratory disease are two of the big factors, but they also looked at mortality in infants, hospital admissions and depression as the outcomes of interest. And on the basis of their systematic review, pulling all the evidence together, they found strong evidence that yes, cold temperatures below 18 degrees are harmful for health. And in countries with temperate or colder climates, 18 degrees is a minimum for safe, well-balanced health of the general population in those areas.
Okay, I'm going to just pause that there and
because I'm going to talk about data generation.
Move us on. Sorry, I'm struggling with this.
So healthy.
Right, let me just move this on. All right. Okay, so just to sum up, that was an experiment done by a government. It wasn't done by a university or an organization. The government paid for this research. And the sum up that was done by this guy, I've cut him off a bit short because I actually quite liked his discussion of the New Zealand intervention. They needed to prove that a government subsidy was going to pay off. So they wanted to determine if the government should invest in people's home efficiency. So the problem was to do with cold houses. It wasn't really to do with problems of the building. The buildings weren't falling down, or the buildings weren't giving off noxious chemicals or anything. It was really to do with the temperature and the health of the occupants. So it is a building problem, but it's really a health problem. And there's so many of these. It's going to be the number one thing that you confront in the buildings that you make. And the quick learnings that he reported to us was that they were trying to improve the energy efficiency of homes, and they were able to get the temperature, they're able to get the energy efficiency improved by 1%, which really doesn't sound like very much. But in fact, this led to a 99% reduction in health costs. So we might have thought that the intervention was a failure because energy use only dropped by 1%. But in fact, the health benefits were huge. And that's the real success story, and the sort of the killer stat that you would get out of this in your narrative. So if you were using the New Zealand data to try and convince the Australian government to do more for heaters and for insulation and home efficiency, you would say, well, there's been this randomized controlled trial in New Zealand, and public study, fully examined by, fully peer reviewed, and every dollar you spend, you'll get back $4 returned. So every single dollar put forward by the government in stimulus will cause a $4 return to society in reduction in health costs, improved sociability, employment, fewer days of work missed, fewer days of school missed, and so on. So the evidence ends up being crucial in being able to put this story together, this narrative together of why to make the change. And in this video, he also mentioned lots of other policy interventions. So he mentioned lots of other programs, lots of other guides came out. The WHO took the results and made health advice about buildings and safe temperatures. So this is the power of evidence. It's not always possible to use evidence with the government. The government doesn't always want the facts. But if you have the facts and they're this good, or you can go get them and you can do a study, increasingly governments listen to facts. Increasingly governments make decisions that are evidence-based. Not always, but increasingly. All right. So one last thing I'd like to do is starting to get everybody ready for this business of pitching solutions and kits that are solutions to problems. And it just so happens that I saw this video literally 4 days ago as part of a conference that I was at. And right now, something that opened just last week is this. This is the Victorian government reaching out to anyone. And it's reaching out about what on earth are we going to do about climate change. And it has all these different sections, and I've grabbed one of the sections, and it's the built environment section. And I thought, I'll get the section that'll be most relevant to this class group. I hope you're not getting bored with my insistence on this, because they had transport in there and they had manufacturing, but I grabbed built environment. And I read the whole report. It's huge. And I'm saving you from having to read it by going straight to section 5.1, question 4. And what this is asking us for, it's really talking to architects. It really wants professional architects to come forward out of oblivion and write to the government and tell them what to do. This is what they want. And so it's saying that if you wrote to us, some of the things you could possibly suggest might be things you know about that are opportunities for energy efficiency upgrades. And they even mention insulation, right? We're getting sick of this, but that's just one of the ones that they suggest. What can we suggest to them also about making houses more resilient to heat and floods? So what would we say would be the minimum things that should happen to every single house in Victoria to get it ready for adverse weather effects? So this is there now. You could quit my class right now and go off and write to the government. And they'd put your letter in the public realm. It would be put up on the DELP website, along with hundreds of others, and everyone can read what you said the government should do. And no surprises, I've done this. I've done it for energy efficiency. And they picked out my submission and they put it in their final report that was advice to the government. So it shows you that they're not just doing this for fun to give all of us something to do. They're actually asking us to help them. And what I want you to do, what we'll try and do now, is I'm going to get you in your teams to go away for 10 minutes and just quickly try and use some of the things we've discussed in this course so far and come back to me, to the rest of us, with like a 1 minute pitch. And your 1 minute pitch, just grab something from architecture or built form or urban form that you know about, that you studied last year or whatever. And in this 1 minute, you need to say, what are the benefits of this? What are the benefits of triple glazed windows? Or what are the benefits of plexiglass flying buttresses? Okay, I don't care what it is. Hopefully, this innovation solves some kind of problem. Maybe houses are too cold. Maybe houses catch fire too easily. That's the landscape. And then the change is what you would do if the government helped you. So I want to put double glazing on every house in Victoria. If the government, that's what I would do, right? I would get the government's help, make double glazing super cheap. And then the main thing, the fifth thing from this 1 minute pitch you're doing is you need to ask for something. The government's only interested in hearing from you if you've got solutions, you've got a plan, and you ask them for something. Get them on board, take them with you in the solution. What is it that you want? Okay, and you can't just say, I need $100 million. Okay, you need to say, I need 100 million discounted cheap windows, or I need 100 million liters of white paint to put on people's roofs. Okay, so this exercise is just for fun. I don't want you to burst your brains thinking about this, but just with your partner, and I know some of you are missing, some of your team members, I'm sorry. You'll be in a room on your own, but just come up with these 5 things. And then when we come back in, I'm just going to get you to shout them out. You have a minute to shout it out, okay? And this is what I'm calling a quick pitch. All right, so just do your best. Any innovation, passive design, whatever the hell, all right? Good luck. And if I put you in the wrong rooms or something's wrong, just come back out and I'll bounce you back in.
Sorry, I can't get into the breakout room.
Okay, all right, just give me a second. I'm just going to broadcast a message to everybody. All right, zooming. So we find out we are.
Oh, it's Jane.
I'm sorry?
Oh, it's Jane.
Good. Did you you just came in a bit late, yeah?
No, I actually Zoom forced out what before, so I just came in.
All right, so you're meant to be in room number 8. All right, I'll put you in room 8. There you go.
Thanks.
And Lay, I've got to put you in a room, don't I? Just a second.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Right, you're in room 7. There you go. Okay, I need to put you in a room, do I? Sorry. Just a minute. 3, 2, 1, 0. Alrighty. Alrighty. Who's here? Georgia. Okay, Georgia, you're here, aren't you? Georgia and Noah, do you guys want to go first? You went last time.
Sure. I can talk briefly. So do I just yell out the innovation?
Yep. So the 5 parts are whatever the innovation is you guys like, what its benefits are, what problems it will solve, what would you do with it if you could, and what do you want from Delp? So just give me, you got 60 seconds to do this. Go.
Okay, so we look into a certain material called LSC, so luminescent solar concentrator material. So yeah, it's a innovation that was made by Australian, and sort of like I'll just share this. So it was like solar panel, but it's in term of a translucent material which can be integrated into building a window and glasses. So it's more aesthetically pleasing. It also absorbs sunlight and convert it into energy. In terms of problem innovation would solve, it will solve the problem of being more sustainable and generate energy. And also how would you deploy this? Because the material have similar property to a solar panel. We're thinking it could be deployed similar with how we deploy solar panels, so maybe cheaper pricing. And what do you need from the DELWP? I would think we would need more funding and research into this material, sort of expand and see how it can be implied in larger scale buildings.
Okay, that's good. Very good. I would add that it's just for windows, right? So you've got heaps of new PV space. And if it's taking energy out of the sun on windows, it must be removing some of the heat that goes through windows, perhaps. Okay, very good. Jeff and Danny, do you want a shot? I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
Go for it, Danny.
So we look into aluminum patio roofs. So the benefits are it provides shade, allow better air circulation, exchange of heat and cool air. And then the problem it solves is that it provides opportunities for new technological integration, such as solar panels, which is really suitable for applying onto these patio roofs, as they are attached on a certain angle that's facing towards the sunny areas. And basically this would deploy to places that's more sunny, that's more hot and needs cooling and better shading. And then we think that what help that the DLWP could provide was that certain guidance to how these patio roofs are suitable to be fixed on certain houses and on certain angles, and also providing guides and
that's good. You got your minutes up, but good effort anyway. Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Jane and Kyle, one of you guys want to go?
Yeah. So we advocate apartment buildings, especially for the flats having courtyard. So it allows the rooms in the middle get sunlight and also bring walkability and greenery to the living space that usually hard to get this spatial quality. And we encourage the use of this measure project with allowance, and also what we need from the is like the promotion of the this kind of construction of development and also the innovation.
Okay, good. Lei, Shang, what have you guys got?
Yes. So we picked the skylight window as the architectural innovation, and the benefit will be the fresh air and natural light from the sky, and it got better ventilation, and it's also saving the energy cost instead of electricity and heating, and the sky view, additional sky view that make a room feel bigger. And the problem that we will solve will be saving the energy cost and the better ventilation. And so we will apply this change for every residential house because they got benefit. And I think we might need to have the request from the government that to apply the change of standard to their policy and regulation to make the change.
Okay, change the rules. Good. All right, Sophia, are you there?
Yeah.
You or Danny? Either.
Yeah, only me. Yeah, I was thinking about replacing the ventilation system in existing offices. So it can, in current situation, important. It can prevent from the spreading the viruses. So people who is working from home now can return back to office. Yeah, and what the what
Great.
else? What I missed? Yeah, it's like financial part of the question. Yeah, the cost, money.
Okay, so and so you would deploy this into where? Build businesses, right?
Offices existing, yeah, because so
Okay,
people can come go back to work.
And so what are you asking DELP for? DELP is the name of the government agency that could make this come true.
Financial support?
Maybe, yeah. Okay, right, so just money. But remember that if it was just about money, they would have already done this. So you've got to sometimes think about what it is they would help. Promotion, experiment, change in the law, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving quickly. Errol or Georgius?
Yeah, we talked about kind of two, but they work hand in hand. So mushroom materials or mycelium, which works in hand with 3D printers, big 3D printer at industrial levels. So mycelium is good because it's organic, composable and biodegradable. It can be formed and shaped and molded. We can use a 3D printer to print this out. So this is a carbon neutral way of upscaling agricultural waste, which is great. It's sustainable and biodegradable. So this will inevitably cut construction time costs and building costs, labor costs within a building, so we can get buildings done as quickly as possible. And what I would need from the DLWP is industrial 3D printers. We're going to need some experts at tech department and maybe some construction and team of scientists.
Okay, but you need to tell them how you would deploy this. So if you ask DELP for a scientist, it's because you're going to try and get mycelium to replace
the building material,
carpet or something, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's good. So these are the 5 components of a pitch. If you ever got in front of somebody from DELP, or if you're going to respond to this submission. So David, do you want to do yours, or Kate? Kate, you missed out going in the room with David, so I guess it's just David.
Yeah, so I went in a little bit of a different direction. I've gone with the concept of co-creation, which is where workshops work entirely with the end users, who are ultimately the specific client that will use the space in the end. This is to be used for every commercial and public building. This ensures the satisfaction of the ultimate client, and can also reduce the waste of a failure of a public space. So it saves money for the government. It'll be undertaken in suburban communities and can also increase tourism, which benefits the economy as well. The change ensures that the users are consulted through every step of the way, and that the risk of having a project that's significantly non-successful is lessened.
Yep.
And we ask approval from DELP or any other governing body for approval for these events to occur, including donations to hold public workshops in order to facilitate these co-creation ideas.
Okay, good. That was pretty tight. Leanne or Jeremy?
Yeah. So the innovation we picked is modular construction. The benefits would be cheaper to build, higher quality of buildings, faster construction, and could be used as a disaster relief. Landscape, the construction process of buildings currently are too slow to keep up with the housing demand in Australia. So then how do we deploy it? We establish industries and factories to produce these modular construction things so that it can be exported to site immediately and built, just assembled quickly. And we're asking for collaboration with construction workers in the industry, giving the government giving incentives and subsidies for buildings built in this construction modular construction method, and material suppliers giving out discounts for any. So basically giving out discounts for materials being used for this construction method, and that's it.
Discounts or subsidies. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, Ria and Cindy, last but not least.
We cannot choose a solar panel as well. So the benefits is that solar panel serves the purpose of observing solar energy and converting into electric power, and that obviously reduce the electricity cost for residents. And also it's a easy and quick installation, so it won't cost much time. And it's a problem that it reduces the greenhouse gas emission and have benefits to the environment. And it also solve the problem that high electricity costs for air conditioner in summer and winter. And so we would like to install solar panels on like all residents' buildings roof. And to achieve that, we would ask for subsidies from government to install solar panel, and also promote the benefits of solar panel to the public through like a series of activities so people can know the benefits of it.
All right. Well, it's a good pitch, but it's been done. So if you were going to pitch again on solar panels, you would need to pick an example of where solar panels haven't worked out. So there's a lot on people's roofs, but there's a lot of people's roofs that don't have them. So a better pitch would have been solar for people who didn't buy any or who missed out, or solar on every single hospital would just be a better pitch, because they'll say we did this. We've already done what you've asked us to do. All right, so that's just a kind of a quick taste of what I would call pitching. We are going to go on to create pitches, and these parts of the introduction, the benefits, the landscape, the introduced change, and what you're asking for are part of a set of 8. So there's 8 specific things that you have to meet in order to do a great pitch. And it meshes in with what you've already covered in your landscape analysis of a problem. The potential way to break a loop is the change, and the potential benefits of the change. These things all become part of the pitch. And The reason I've skipped, sorry, Darren and Shirley, is that I didn't see you guys in the room. So I think you might have missed out on this exercise. But to all the rest of you, that's great. Okay, good job. And these things are things you can throw together quickly. So if the government asks you for suggestions, right, several of the pictures you've made here should be given to the government, right? You can't rely on them knowing everything about architecture. And even if it's something like mycelium, which is a frontier piece of research, anything goes for climate change. If you can put a good enough pitch together that mycelium is more resilient than wood, or it doesn't burn, or it's more water resistant, then it should be on the table. And as you said yourself, it's a good use of waste. But all these things could be written into proposals for DELP, and DELP would publish them. So I just want to make one comment about the ask. So the key to getting anything out of anybody is that you're bringing them on board, you're giving them part of the ownership of the solution. And thus you need to know, who are they? Who are you asking? And the actors in your ecology diagram are the people initially that you would go after. And you would need to know who they are and what their powers are. And then in turn, how do they see you as helping them? And the person you're connecting with in government is usually some kind of champion. And you want them to do something for you. And so I've just put this final diagram together because as we go on, excuse me, very hot in this room. As we go on, we're going to be crafting pictures for government because we want them to do something. And if I was running this course 10 years ago, I'd be telling you that the people you're talking to in government are going to turn around to their people and do this to them, right? They're going to take what you're asking them to do and try and create a service, try and follow the rules. They'll work top down and they'll do it because they have to do it. But these days, things are changing. And when you go to them with your brilliant idea for patio roofs, they have to incorporate what you say and change what they do and try and support you. This is what's changing. And especially with climate change, the government realizes it doesn't have the answers and that it has to adapt quickly and take your suggestions, your pitches, and act on them. Okay, and so this is what's known as human learning systems. And I'd like it if you could, as part of your prep work for next week, do two things. Read these two short documents about human learning systems, which is the government that is going to listen to you. There's one about systems solutions, and there's one about what they're calling humble government. And then for next week is reviews. So Maida will review all the master's work next week. It's doing it actually this week as well. And what I would like you to do is take the work that you've done, or some of you haven't quite finished, this is your last chance, to incorporate our feedback and polish up your presentations. I've made a new mural. So there's a mural next door to the current mural. The new one is called Problems and Entrepreneurs. Please go in there and grab a space. So expand the space and grab a space for your team. And put in there your problem with all of its details, your diagrams after feedback from us. And I asked you to pick the entrepreneurs. Just about everybody picked Jeff Speck. I want you to go into the form that was filled out for Jeff Speck. So the policy entrepreneur form was this great big long form detailing aspects of this guy. And I want you to take out of there any specific qualities this guy has got that you are relying on for him to solve your problems. So if it wasn't Jeff Speck, it was someone else, go through the bio, the PE form, and get out some of the answers that that team put in for some of the qualities of that entrepreneur. Perhaps the entrepreneur is really great at building coalitions, or perhaps the entrepreneur is really great at relocating solutions from other places. And you see that as being the reason to pick this man or woman. Some of you have done this already, but others of you have just picked the real basics. So you picked a traffic person such as Penelosa because he's good at solving traffic problems. Can you go further into Penelosa's form and grab some other aspects of this guy to show us why you used him? At the same time, it took me quite a while to get your forms back to you, sorry. So it took me, I had an RA looking at it, but she was sick. So you've got another shot to get this completely up to scratch and place it all in Mural. So your PE forms go in Mural as well. And then I'm going to use this Mural layout. Hopefully you can add a few decorations as the space that I'll take Maida through to show them what you've done. So that the demonstration is next Tuesday. So you've got until next Monday. I'll redistribute the PE forms again to everybody when you have submitted them with improvements. So there you go. You got one more shot, and then take everything you've done, arrange it properly, set it out well, fix the presentation in your own space in the new Mural. So I'll write up these instructions. I'll put these instructions on Moodle and I'll mail you again. And this will be the last time you just work with one other person. We're going to reform into teams. So there'll be teams of 4. And the teams of 4 will work on the kits that we're going to make and then pitch. All right, sorry, it's 11:05. I've kept you on a bit long. I hope that's clear. Anyone got any questions or any feedback or need anything from me? No. All right, so I'll mail you all shortly with these instructions. They're pretty much as on the screen. I'll send you these links to these 2 articles. The articles are great. They're really good news articles about future better working with the government. And then this bit here about using the new Mural. Alrighty, that's it from me. And, don't know what to do, shoot me a mail and let's get all this stuff ready for the Maida review. And great work. As you saw from Lakshman, she fed back and she said you've done super well and that everything was at least a B+ from what she saw. Given that you aren't sociology students, she's a political scientist. You've done well. All right. See you later.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.